It is Friday, August the 9th, and this is Political Palette. Kamala Harris officially announces her running mate for her campaign, Governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz. Former President Trump has not hosted any new rallies or events since the announcement. We'll dive deep into how this changes the political sphere and get into all of the facts. That and more in today's show. This episode is brought to you by Empower United, a nonprofit organization dedicated to LGBTQ+ youth and fairness for all. You can learn more at empowerunited.org. This week, the nominee of the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, picked Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, as her running mate. This decision marks a strategic move aimed at shoring up support in critical battleground states while appealing to both the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the more centrist blue-collar voters. Walz, a former teacher, coach, and 24-year veteran of the Army National Guard, brings a diverse background to the ticket, complementing Harris's experience and appeal. Walz's political journey began in 2006 when he won a U.S. House seat in a traditionally Republican district in southern Minnesota. Over his 12 years in Congress, he built a reputation as a moderate, bipartisan figure, particularly on veterans issues. However, his tenure as governor of Minnesota saw him take a more progressive turn, particularly after Democrats gained full control of the state government in 2023. Walz's administration has passed significant legislation, including protecting abortion rights, legalizing marijuana, and enacting police reform, policies that align closely with the Harris campaign's platform. Walz's shift on gun control has also been notable, initially receiving an A rating from the NRA during his congressional career. His stance evolved following the Parkland school shooting. He has since championed gun safety measures in Minnesota, including universal background checks and red flag laws. This evolution mirrors the broader shift within the Democratic Party and highlights his ability to adapt to changing political landscapes. Now, I wanted to take a moment to show you some clips from recent rallies that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have held together. Take a listen.
I know a little something about that commitment to people. I was born in a small town of 400 people in Nebraska, and community was the way of life. My mom and dad taught me you show generosity to your neighbors and you work for a common good amongst them. At 17, I joined the Army National Guard. And for the next 24 years, it was a privilege to wear the uniform of this country. And just as it did for my dad, a Korean War era veteran, and millions of others, I used the GI Bill to get a college education. Followed a bit in my dad's footsteps. He was a teacher. My brothers and sisters were teachers. And they married teachers. I had the privilege of teaching high school social studies. And I coached the football team.
As many of you know, before I was elected vice president, before I was elected as a United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General, and before that, elected District Attorney, and before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, scammers who broke the rules for personal gain. So hear me, Detroit, when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. I've been dealing with them my whole career.
Now, the Harris-Walz ticket represents a blend of progressive ambition and Midwestern pragmatism. which the campaign hopes will resonate in Rust Belt states that are crucial for a Democratic victory. Walz's Midwestern roots and his track record of winning in a swing district make him a valuable asset and appealing to voters in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. His folksy demeanor and ability to connect with working class voters are seen as key strengths, especially to Democrats who aim to rebuild the blue wall that secured Biden's victory in 2020. Moreover, Walz has already proven to be an effective surrogate for Harris on the campaign trail, particularly in his sharp criticisms of the Republican ticket of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. His branding of far-right Republican policies as weird has struck a chord and provided the Harris campaign with a catchy yet pointed narrative to differentiate itself from the opposition. Despite the strengths that Walz brings to the ticket, his tenure as governor has not been without controversy. His handling of the George Floyd protests and the COVID-19 pandemic have drawn criticism from both the right and the left. During the Floyd protests, Walz was criticized for his delayed deployment of the National Guard, which some argue allowed unrest to escalate. His approach to school closures during the pandemic also faced scrutiny, with Republicans labeling his actions as overly cautious and damaging to students' education. These issues will likely be focal points of Republican attacks as the campaign progresses and how the Harris-Walz ticket navigates these criticisms, and it'll be crucial to its success. But in conclusion, Tim Walz's addition to the Democrat ticket provides Kamala Harris with a running mate who balances progressive ideals with the ability to connect with swing voters in critical states. His track record as a governor who delivered on key issues, coupled with his appeal to both urban and rural voters, makes him a formidable partner in the upcoming election. However, the challenges he faced as governor will also be points of contention, and the campaign will need to effectively counter these to maintain momentum. Together, Harris and Walz represent a ticket that aims to unify the Democratic Party's diverse factions while appealing to a broad spectrum of voters across the country. Their success will depend on their ability to address both the hopes and concerns of the electorate in what promises to be a fiercely contested election. Now, something that has been quite a debated topic lately is the demonstration of a political momentum that Kamala Harris and her running mate has been able to create. They've been making headlines with a series of massive rallies that have not only energized their base, but also sent shockwaves through the MAGA community. The rallies, characterized by large, enthusiastic crowds, have underscored the strength and unity of the Democratic ticket, setting the stage for a fierce battle against Donald Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance. The Harris-Walz campaign kicked off with a raucous rally in Philadelphia. Just hours after Walz, who was officially announced as Harris's running mate, the energy was palpable as Harris introduced Walz, who quickly won over the crowd with his sharp wit and pointed critiques of the Trump-Vance ticket. Walz, a seasoned politician with deep roots in the Midwest, brought a refreshing dynamism to the campaign, branding Trump and Vance as weird as hell, and drawing laughs and cheers from the audience. This rally was the beginning of a tour through key battleground states. They also aimed to build on the momentum in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Pennsylvania, with each rally drawing significant crowds. The rallies have been marked by a clear message. This campaign is not just about defeating Trump, but about fighting for the future of the country. The sheer size and enthusiasm of the crowds at these rallies have reportedly made the Trump campaign and the MAGA community increasingly anxious. The rallies have been strategically designed to showcase the Walz-Harris ticket appeal to both progressive voters and those in traditionally conservative areas. The MAGA community has reacted with a mixture of concern and frustration as the Harris-Walz rallies have outshined recent Trump events. both in turnout and in the fervor of the supporters. Moreover, the Harris-Walz campaign has successfully framed the narrative that they are the underdogs in the race, but with a growing momentum that could turn the tide. This underdog narrative, coupled with the enthusiastic support from progressive leaders and grassroots organizations, has further fueled the nervousness within the MAGA ranks. The rallies have also been a fundraising boon for the Harris-Walz campaign, putting in millions of dollars in grassroots donations shortly after the Walz decision. The rallies led by Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are not just campaign events. They are powerful demonstrations of the energy and unity within the Democratic Party. As the Harris-Walz ticket continues to draw large crowds and build momentum in crucial states, it is clear that the MAGA community is feeling the pressure. With just over 90 days into the election, or 88 as this recording, the Harris-Walz campaign is poised to challenge the Trump-Vance ticket in ways that could reshape the political landscape. Now, like anything, of course, when a political candidate first comes into the main spotlight, many allegations boot right up. And this comes from all different sides, different political parties, mainly the Republicans. But he's found himself at the center of controversy fueled by his long-standing ties to China. While Walz's experience in China brings a unique and nuanced perspective to U.S.-China relations, it has also become a focal point of Republican attacks, which seek to paint him as overly sympathetic to Beijing. However, the reality of Walz's relationship with China is far more complex and potentially advantageous. Walz's connection with China dates back to 1989, when fresh out of college, he moved to Guangdong province to teach English and American history as part of a Harvard University program. This was a period of intense political upheaval in China, coming just after the Tiananmen Square massacre. Walz has spoken fondly of the Chinese people he met during this time, expressing their admiration for their resilience and potential, while also being deeply critical of the Chinese government's authoritarian actions. This experience gave him a rare first-hand understanding of China at a pivotal moment in modern history. During his time in Congress, Walz continued to engage in Chinese issues, advocating for human rights and democracy. He supported imprisoned Chinese activists, met with Dalai Lama, and backed legislation in support of Hong Kong democracy activists. This track record demonstrates that while Walz has a deep personal connection with China, he has not shied away from criticizing its government and policies. Republicans have seized on Walz's background to suggest that he is pro-China and to question his ability to be tough on Beijing. The Trump campaign has labeled him as the Great Walls of China, attempting to frame him as dangerous closeness to China. Some conservative commentators have gone too far as to dub him as a Manchurian candidate, insinuating that his experiences in China have compromised his loyalty to the United States. These attacks, however, often distort the reality of Walz's experiences and positions. For instance, while Walz has expressed empathy for the Chinese people, he has consistently criticized the CCP and its authoritarian practices. His advocacy for human rights and democracy, both in Congress and beyond, underscores his commitment to American values, not Beijing's interests. Despite the criticism, Walz's deep understanding of China could actually be a strategic asset in the current geopolitical climate. His experiences provide him with a nuanced perspective on the U.S.-China relationship, one that recognizes the complexity of engaging with China as both a competitor and a critical global player. This could prove valuable as the U.S. navigates ongoing tensions over issues such as trade, Taiwan, and human rights. Moreover, Walz's history of standing up to the Chinese government could bolster the Harris-Walz ticket's credibility on foreign policy. It positions them as knowledgeable and experienced, capable of both engaging with China where necessary and confronting it when American interests and values are at stake. Now, speaking of issues surrounding Walz, and by the way, my personal take in this situation is, well, you're going to go visit a country. Just because you go visit China, right, doesn't mean you just are corrupted and no longer an American citizen and no longer believe in freedom. Like, if I go on a trip to Beijing to go see the city, the lights, and experience the food, the culture, the people, right, that doesn't necessarily mean that I just compromise my whole relationship to the United States and intelligence. Like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever, how that's kind of something to attack about. But of course, there always has to be something here that comes up and sours tastes of voters, right? It's kind of the political play, and that's what happens when it comes to politics. But there is another controversy with Tim Walz. So the allegations of stolen valor related to his military service in the Army National Guard. The accusations claim that Walz, who served from 1981 to 2005, falsely presented himself as having achieved the rank of Command Sergeant Major when in fact he retired as a Master Sergeant. These allegations have been pushed by some veterans and conservative commentators who argue that Walz misrepresented his military credentials for political gain. Specifically, the controversy stems from a conditional promotion to Command Sergeant Major that Walz received, but was later rescinded because he did not complete the required coursework. When his unit was preparing for deployment to Iraq in 2005, Walz retired, which some critics have labeled as abandoning his duties. This has led to claims that Walz misled the public about his military service, with some even accusing him of stolen valor, a term used to describe someone who falsely claims military honors or accomplishments. However, Walz's supporters point out that his long-standing advocacy for veterans, highlighting his work in Congress, where he championed various veterans' issues, including benefits and healthcare reforms. They argued that the accusations are politically motivated attempts to tarnish his reputation as a dedicated public servant and veteran. This issue has become a focal point of Republican attacks, especially as the 2024 campaign heats up, with some using it to question his credibility and fitness for office. We'll be right back after a message from Empower United.
Discover Empower United, a beacon of hope and empowerment for LGBTQ+ youth. We are dedicated to providing the support, advocacy, and resources necessary to uplift and inspire our community. Our mission is to create a world where every LGBTQ+ young person feels valued, accepted, and empowered to reach their full potential. At Empower United, we offer a variety of programs and services designed to address the unique challenges faced by LGBTQ+ youth. We need your help to continue our vital work. By donating as little as $5, you can make a significant impact on the lives of LGBTQ+ youth. Visit empowerunited.org today to learn more about our programs and to make your donation.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, you could always support the show by going to politicalpalette.show and following me at any social media platform. If you have something to say it to me. Up to 90-second voice clip at speakpipe.com/politicalpalette. So as we move into the next topic, we're going to talk about Donald Trump's recent press conference at Mar-a-Lago. Set against the luxurious background of his Florida estate, Trump delivered a performance that was both perplexing and captivating, filled with bizarre comparisons, questionable statements, and a palpable sense of desperation. Mar-a-Lago, Trump's lavish resort in Palm Beach, Florida, has been a long symbol of his wealth and status. It served as a fitting location for a press conference that was meant to reassert his dominance in a campaign that has faced significant hurdles. Since Kamala Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee, Trump's campaign has struggled to maintain the momentum it once had. Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, have been drawing large crowds in battleground states. While Trump has been criticized for his relatively light campaign schedule, the decision to hold this press conference at Mar-a-Lago, an empty venue during the off-season, was telling. It was a stark contrast to the packed arenas that Harris had been filling. The optics alone suggested a campaign that was trying to regain its footing, and Trump's performance did little to dispel that notion. One of the most jaw-dropping moments of the press conference came when Trump compared the crowd size at his January 6th rally to that of Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. Trump claimed that his rally had more people despite clear evidence to the contrary. The March on Washington in 1963 drew approximately 250,000 people, making it one of the largest civil rights demonstrations in American history. In contrast, Trump's January 6 rally, which preceded the storming of the U.S. Capitol, attracted about 10,000 people, according to most estimates. This comparison was not only factually inaccurate, but also deeply offensive to many. The March on Washington was a pivotal moment in the fight for civil rights. While the January 6th rally has become synonymous with an attack on American democracy, by equating the two, Trump not only misrepresented history, but also appeared to trivialize the legacy of the civil rights movement. The press conference was filled with other bizarre and questionable statements that left many scratching their heads. Trump repeatedly referred to Kamala Harris as competent or incompetent. Why would he refer to her as competent, right? And compared her unfavorably to Hillary Clinton, who he described as smart and her own worst enemy. This was a curious pivot, as Trump had spent so much of his 2016 campaign demonizing Clinton, yet here we are, seemingly praising her in comparison to Harris. Trump also made a series of odd remarks about his relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, claiming that Kim liked him a lot, and suggesting that this was a sign of his diplomatic prowess. These comments were reminiscent of Trump's earlier fascination with authoritarian leaders, but they did little to clarify his current foreign policy stance. One of the more concerning aspects of the press conference was Trump's erratic behavior. At several points, he seemed to lose his train of thought, jumping from one topic to another without any clear connection. This lack of coherence was compounded by his repeated claims that he was leading by a lot in the polls, despite evidence to the contrary. Harris had been closing the gap in several key battleground states, and Trump's own campaign had acknowledged the need to step up their efforts. Despite its chaotic nature, the press conference was clearly intended as a campaign reset. Trump had recently backed out of a debate with Harris, only to commit to one and call for two more during the press conference. This move was likely an attempt to regain the narrative and draw Harris into the direct confrontation, something that Trump thrives on. However, the press conference also highlighted the challenges facing the Trump campaign. The former president's complaints about media coverage, particularly regarding the size of Harris's rally crowds, suggested a candidate who was increasingly frustrated with his inability to control the narrative. His attacks on the media were nothing new, but they took on a more desperate tone as he accused reporters of being unfair and biased. The reaction to Trump's press conference was swift and largely negative. Political commentators from across the spectrum criticized his bizarre comparisons and questionable statements. Many saw the event as a sign of a campaign in trouble, with Trump struggling to regain his footing as Harris and Walz gained momentum. On social media, the press conference quickly became a trending topic, with many users mocking Trump's claims about crowd sizes and his erratic behavior. The comparison to Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington was particularly incendiary, drawing condemnation from civil rights leaders and historians alike. Even within the Republican Party, there were signs of unease. While Trump still commands a loyal base, some GOP leaders expressed concern that his focus on personal attacks and bizarre comparisons was distracting from a more substantial policy discussions. There was also worry that Trump's comments could alienate key voter groups, including African Americans, who were offended by his comparison of January 6th to the civil rights movement. The Mar-a-Lago press conference was a window into the current state of Trump's campaign, and the view was not encouraging. It revealed a candidate who was increasingly out of touch with the realities of the race, clinging to outdated talking points and bizarre comparisons in an effort to regain control of the narrative. Trump's reliance on personal attacks and erratic behavior has always been his part of his political persona. But in the context of a 2024 campaign, it appears to be a liability. Harris-Walz have been running a disciplined and focused campaign, with a clear message and a strong ground game. In contrast, Trump's campaign seems to be floundering, unable to keep up with the pace of the race. The press conference also highlighted the challenges facing the Republican Party as a whole. Trump's influence over the party remains strong, but his erratic behavior and questionable statements are increasingly seen as a liability. As the 2024 election draws closer, the GOP will need to decide whether to fully embrace Trump's style of politics or to distance itself from his more controversial behavior. Donald Trump's press conference at Mar-a-Lago was a strange and revealing event. It provided a glimpse into the state of his campaign and his mindset as the 2024 election approaches, filled with bizarre comparisons, questionable statements, and erratic behavior. The press conference raised more questions than it answered, and for Trump supporters, the press conference was likely seen as another example of his unfiltered and authentic style. For his detractors, it was further proof that he is unfit for office. But for the broader electorate, the event may have been a turning point, a moment when the cracks in Trump's campaign became impossible to ignore. As the election continues to unfold, the impact of this press conference will likely be debated for months to come. But one thing is certain. In a campaign already filled with twists and turns, the Mar-a-Lago press conference will stand out as one of the most bizarre and revealing moments of the 2024 race. On top of all of this bad news for the Trump campaign, he also basically said that Joe Rogan's going to have a lot of boos the next time he goes into the USC arena. That is crazy. I mean, Joe Rogan's the one guy you probably don't want to say bad things about, but Trump did it anyway. And who knows how that's going to affect the independent voters and the ones on the fence who listen to Joe's show. Joe offers an experience for a lot of voters who might want to hear differing opinions from both sides. Joe said that he would be voting for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and basically that made Trump mad, and that caused Trump to go ahead and post on Truth Social that Joe's going to have chance of boos at the UFC event. That is just crazy and very childish if you ask me. Where are his aides? Who are running his campaign? I'd really like to know. Now, as we close, are you ready for Matty's point of view? One of my favorite parts of our new format here on Political Palette. So as the 2024 election approaches, it's becoming increasingly clear that the Republican Party is facing significant internal challenges. Many Republicans are openly expressing their dissatisfaction with Donald Trump as their nominee, with some even considering voting for alternative candidates like RFK Jr. or, in a surprising twist, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. This fracturing within the party is stark, especially when compared to the Democrats, who seem to be gaining new voters and unifying behind their ticket. One of the most striking developments is the visible divide within the Republican Party. During the primaries, there was a significant opposition to Trump's candidacy, with multiple other candidates garnering millions of votes. This level of internal dissent was unusual and highlighted a deeper discomfort within the party. While Trump ultimately won the primaries, the fact that there was such a robust opposition should not be overlooked. It signals a broader issue. The Republican Party was unable to unify behind a single candidate, which is crucial for electoral success. This disunity has continued into the general election campaign. The fact that some Republicans are contemplating voting for RFK Jr. or even Harris-Walz is a testament to the dissatisfaction many feel with Trump, and not to mention the Republicans for Harris Foundation, which is garnering major momentum. This fragmentation could have serious consequences, particularly in battleground states where every vote counts. In these states, even small margins can determine the outcome, and a divided Republican base could lead to significant losses. Independent voters are also playing a crucial role in this election. Historically, independents have been a key swing demographic, and their leanings often determine the outcome of tight races. But currently, there is evidence that many independents are leading away from Trump. This shift is concerning for the GOP because independents have been a crucial part of the coalition that bought Trump power in 2016. If they continue to drift away, it could spell disaster for his chances in 2024. While the current trajectory suggests that Trump's chances of winning are slim, it's important to acknowledge that things could change. The political landscape is fluid, and unexpected developments could alter the dynamics of the race. However, for Trump to turn things around, a significant reboot of his campaign strategy would be necessary. This is something that some within the Republican Party have recommended, but so far there hasn't been a clear shift in approach. One glaring weakness in the Trump campaign is its lack of focus on younger voters, particularly Gen Z. Kamala Harris and her campaign have made a concerted effort to engage young voters, going all in to secure their support. In contrast, Trump's campaign, particularly through his MAGA war room social media strategy, has been relatively silent on this front. This is a crucial oversight that young voters are becoming increasingly influential demographic. By not actively courting this group, the GOP is potentially leaving votes on the table. And from a purely analytical perspective, if things continue on their current trajectory, it is likely that Trump will not win the 2024 election. The Republican Party is grappling with significant internal divisions, and the lack of unity could prove to be its undoing. Additionally, the failure to engage key voter demographics like independents and Gen Z further weakens Trump's chances. While things could change and the GOP could potentially rally behind a new strategy, the current state of the race suggests that the road ahead for Trump is a challenging one. That's all I got, guys. That was Matty's point of view. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Political Palette. We're already on episode 12. I've been doing the show every Friday for 12 weeks. Share the show to your friends and family and everybody who listens to podcasts. And even if they don't listen to podcasts, share it to them anyway. My name's Matty, and you can find me at Matty Unhinged on all social media. Matty.unhinged on Instagram if you'd like to see some of my personal life. But other than that, thank you so much for listening. And if you'd like to send in up to 90 seconds voice note, do that. Speakpipe.com/politicalpalette. Thank you for listening, everybody. I'll see you next Friday. Let's see how crazy things get as we heat up. Only 88 days until the presidential election.